Hi there, I'm Brother Merrill, and this is Sunshine for the Soul, Inspirational Stories. I appreciate everyone that listens. I have two amazing stories today about the Native Americans and their encounters with early LDS missionaries and explorers. They're great stories. I hope you enjoy them as much as I have. Before I start, I'd like to thank everyone that has shared inspirational stories with me. Next week we'll have an episode that shares some of the miraculous events that take place in your lives. If you have an inspirational story you'd like to share, please send it to the email listed in the comments section. Thank you. The Book of Mormon declares that convincing the Lamanites of the truth was their major purpose in writing and preserving their record. They identify the Lamanites as the target audience of this important record, while recognizing it was also of great worth to the Gentiles. The Lord's hand was revealed on numerous occasions as the indigenous people of the Americas met early LDS missionaries and settlers. Their traditional beliefs speak of ancestors' great civilizations, records buried in the earth, visitations from heavenly beings, and they also predicted future encounters with messengers who would bring them a book to rescue and renew them. Elders from many different tribes were abundantly given dreams and visions, preparing them to receive the Book of Mormon. There are many instances of tribal elders realizing the fulfillment of their dreams and visions when LDS elders first encountered them. I'd like to share one of them today. Then I have an amazing story of a miraculous event that took place in the 1800s with the Zuni tribe, a peaceful religious people living on the Colorado Plateau. But first, a story about Melvin J. Ballard. In the early 1900s, he was assigned to work with the Blackfeet Indians and other Native American tribes in Montana and the Northwest. One day, as he was traveling by train across Montana through the Missouri River bottoms, Elder Ballard looked out the window and noticed a large encampment of several hundred Blackfoot Indians, and their teepees were pitched in a huge circle on the prairie next to the river. He immediately felt a keen desire to visit these people. When the train stopped at a small town nearby, he disembarked after making arrangements to reboard the train the next day when it passed through. Then he found a fellow who understood Blackfoot and asked him to take him out to the encampment. He hired a buggy and horse with the driver, and when they arrived, Elder Ballard left the buggy and started to walk toward the teepees. Several of the tribal elders saw him, and they got very excited and rushed toward him, and they were speaking urgently to him in Blackfoot. He didn't understand them, but they seemed to want something. After listening to their pleas, the interpreter explained that these chiefs had seen Elder Ballard in their dreams. And in these visions they saw a white man laden with books of great value to them and their people. They had immediately recognized Elder Ballard as the man they had seen in their dreams, and desperately wanting the books he was to bring them. Through the interpreter, Elder Ballard told them about the Book of Mormon and explained its relation to them and to their people. He then gave them all the books he had in his possession, promising to return shortly with many Book of Mormons for the tribe, and telling them he would teach them of how it spoke of their ancestors. As the interpreter and Elder Ballard rode back toward this newly laid-out town of Chicken Hill, he felt impressed to buy 2 building lots. Some time later, when he returned as he had promised, he found that demands for lots in the town had skyrocketed, so he sold the lots he had acquired earlier and used the proceeds to build a chapel on property he bought near the Indian encampment. The building was used for a church and as a school for the Blackfeet village. Many of the tribe joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and today their descendants and many others are firm in the faith. This tiny chapel has been the site of many spiritual experiences, healings, manifestations, and other spiritual gifts. Smallpox was a major killer of Native Americans. In the early 1800s, it's estimated to have killed over 130,000 Native Americans, though most people consider this number quite low. From 1875 to 1882, a second smallpox epidemic struck tribes in the American Southwest. It killed a third of the tribes it infected. During this time, JacobHamblin and other LDS settlers came into contact with several peaceful tribes in the region south of the Colorado River. The Hopi, the Supai, and the Zuni tribes were religious people and had isolated in this remote region to avoid conflict with other tribes. Because of ancient legends, the Zunis had also avoided contact with bearded white men from the east, who they believed would destroy them. These same legends told of a peaceful bearded white people who would come from the west, who would have a good spirit and save them. As a result, early contact between the LDS people and those tribes was generally very amiable. These situations provided a unique opportunity to test Brigham Young's Indian policy without the influence of hostile federal interference. In 1878, Llewellyn Harris was called on a mission to the Rio Grande Valley in New Mexico. Traveling towards his mission, he came to the Zuni Nation. He arrived on January 20th, 1878. The conditions he encountered there caused him to remain in the village for 8 days and allowed him to share a miraculous experience with these people. It also gave him an opportunity to become acquainted with their customs, history, and their traditions. They believed that before the Spanish conquest, the Zuni Indians had lived in Mexico. Some of them claimed to be descendants of Montezuma, believing that after their conquest, their people had fled north to re-inhabit and rebuild the ancient pueblos. The Zunis believed these ruins testified that they had once been a powerful nation. Elder Harris noted that the massive pueblo ruins indicated that there had been an advanced civilization there once. He found the Zuni people to be very industrious. They were an agrarian people that grew beans and squash and corn, and they also had livestock. However, when he arrived, he saw that a smallpox epidemic was having a crushing effect on this tribe. He arranged to stay in the home of one of the tribal elders, Captain Lochi, who had 3 children. His children were all infected with smallpox. Captain Lochi and his wife were extremely distressed, knowing of the often fatal outcome of this terrible disease. The first night, as Elder Harris slept, he was awakened by the cries of the family and their neighbors. He arose to find their daughter gasping for breath and dying. She was only 12 years old. Elder Harris wanted to administer to her immediately, but was restrained by the Spirit. He quietly watched until the young girl's gasping ceased and she stopped breathing. Everyone was overcome with grief at her death. In that moment, the Spirit strongly impressed Elder Harris to administer a healing blessing upon that young girl, which he obeyed. The girl was immediately revived. She subsequently slept peacefully the remainder of the night. He also administered to their other 2 sick children before he returned to bed. A calm peace settled over everyone, and the neighbors left. Everything in the Lochi's home seemed better in the morning. The news of this miraculous healing spread throughout the Zuni village. Almost immediately, desperate parents asked Elder Harris to administer a priesthood blessing to their sick children. He then visited at least 25 families each day for the next 4 days. Elder Harris recounts that the power of the Lord was manifest to such a degree that nearly all he administered to recovered. However, the disease was spreading so quickly he was unable to keep up with the request for priesthood blessings. On the 5th morning at 8 a.m., a Zuni woman came and asked him to come pray for the sick. She escorted him to a large room in one of the pueblos. When he entered, he found that they had gathered the sick from all parts of the village. 6 Zunis completely filled the large room and the rest of the house. He said the stench that arose and the horrible sight that met his eyes was beyond description. There was a Spaniard there who spoke English and Zuni. He offered to act as an interpreter, then advised Elder Harris that everyone in the room needed a priesthood blessing. Elder Harris was overcome with this responsibility, but he was the only elder in the village, so he agreed. Then he silently pled with the Lord to strengthen him for this monumental task. He commenced immediately, and as soon as he administered to one individual, they were removed, and another was carried into the room. It was late afternoon before they stopped bringing in the sick. When Elder Harris finally left the building, it was dark. The Spaniard who had interpreted each blessing asked Elder Harris if he knew how many people he had prayed for, but he had not kept track. However, the interpreter had counted each blessing. Elder Harris had administered to 406 Zuni people infected with smallpox that day in the pueblo. Exhausted, he slowly made his way back to Captain Lochi's home. The next morning he said he could hardly lift his arms, they were so sore. News of this miraculous event spread throughout the village. Elder Harris spent 2 days trying to recover. He estimated that he had given over 700 priesthood blessings in 5 days. When he felt strong enough, he resumed his journey toward the Rio Grande Valley, but he was taken down by a severe fever and had to spend a week recuperating with a member family, John Hunt, and his family in the Savoy Valley. After regaining his strength, he resumed his journey to the Rio Grande Valley, where he preached the gospel to the Mexican people for the next 4 months. However, after this miraculous healing event, a Presbyterian minister that had been working in the Zuni village began to discredit the miracle to anyone who would listen. He enlisted 2 Spaniards, a Navajo, the Zuni medicine man, and a white Zuni, to attempt to slander and explain what had happened, saying that those who were healed by the power of the devil. Seems like that's one of the Satan's favorite lines. As Elder Harris journeyed home after his mission, he stopped again at the Hunts, where he had recuperated from his fever. They told him of the slander being spread to discredit the miraculous healing in the Zuni village. The Presbyterian minister responsible for starting the rumors had passed by their home not long before, and they said he was nearly dead with consumption. When Elder Harris arrived in the Zuni village, he was greeted as a returning hero. He learned that almost everyone he had administered to had completely recovered. Only those who had believed the slander spread by the Presbyterian minister had not been healed. They had succumbed to smallpox. There were also those who had participated in cures suggested by the medicine man, and they also struggled with the pox. But when the medicine man died a few weeks after the healings, those participations stopped. The Navajo who had helped spread disinformation was also killed by his own people when he returned to his village. They were afraid he would infect their village with smallpox. those who had opposed the Lord's work had paid a heavy price. Elder Harris knew that the power of God was made manifest to the Zunis through those healings, as was the judgment of God to all that doubted or opposed it. He said, "It seemed that I was, by the providence of God, cast among the Zuni people in their moment of need. I felt that I was one of the weakest of my brethren, and I pled with the Lord to strengthen me, to make his power manifest, if it was his will. He did strengthen me, and bore me up to accomplish his will in the Zuni village. Because I was given the authority to act in the Lord's name, his power was manifest through me, a humble elder." For many years, the Zuni people spoke of this miraculous event, testifying as a group to the miracle of their village's cure from smallpox, as an elder from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints had spoken for the Lord and healed them. I think those are both wonderful stories. There are many stories of the early encounters of the Native American people with early LDS immigrants to the West. And there are some miraculous events and many stories of dreams and visions that prepared tribes from Canada to Mexico to hear their message. I hope you've enjoyed these stories today. I thought it was wonderful that Elder Harris, it's not a name that you've heard before, and yet he stepped up when he was called on. And despite the feelings he had of inadequacy, he reached out and did what he could, and the Lord bore him up. And I know that the Lord does that for each of us. If we will listen to the promptings of the Spirit, we will come to be instruments in the Lord's hands, because God loves his children. If you have any doubt of that, if you wonder if you've done too many things in your life and offended the Lord to the point that he doesn't want to associate with you anymore, push those thoughts out of your mind. That is not the truth. And as you wonder, does the Lord love me? Please kneel down. Think about these things. And then humbly and sincerely ask the Lord verbally on your knees, "Do you love me?" And I promise you, you will feel the Lord's love pour into your heart and into your mind. God loves you. Ask him. I hope you've enjoyed these stories today. This has been Sunshine for the Soul, Inspirational Stories. You can subscribe here. And if you enjoyed this story, you'll probably enjoy this one. And you can listen to all of Sunshine for the Soul right here. Thank you.